The function we defined before is of limited usefulness. Chances are we're not usually just trying to print out the symbol for yen to the console, we usually want to use it in some other program we're writing. So instead of printing it directly, let's create a function that will return that symbol. So in the code shown here, we've changed line 2. Specifically, we've changed the function name. Instead of print yen, it's now return yen. We've also changed the body of the function. Line 4 says to return the string with a character for yen, instead of just printing it. Notice the syntax of this return statement. It's the word return, it's bold and in red because it's a reserved word in Python, followed by a space, although optionally you could do an open and close parentheses, and then followed by the string for the symbol for yen. In other functions, that could be a number, that could be a longer string, that could be anything. Any kind of value or variable that holds a value. As before, the first time this code runs, it skips lines 3 and 4 because those are inside the function, and right now, we're just defining the function. We'll only run lines 3 and 4 when the function is called. As the program continues to run, it reaches line 7. Line 7 says to print the output of the function return yen, comma, and not end that line with anything. Again, you can ignore this end at the end for now. All it does is tell Python to print the next thing on the same line as the previous thing. The important thing here is this call to the return yen function. As we've said before, when Python encounters nested parentheses like these, it starts on the inside and works its way out. So, return yen is inside the parentheses for print. So first Python is going to try and resolve what return yen means. Here, return yen is a function call. And so just like our other function, it jumps the execution of the program to that function. Now that return yen has been called, the computer runs lines 3 and 4. What does line 4 do though? Well, line 4 says to return the symbol for yen. That's the only thing the function does. And so it's the only thing we really need to wonder about right now. When a function ends with a return statement like this one, what it basically says is to take whatever follows the keyword return, in this case the symbol for yen, and replace the function call with it. So where this previously said to print the output of return yen, now it says to print the string holding the character for yen. Now there are no more parentheses or expressions left to resolve. There's no more functions left to evaluate. And so this print statement can just run. And as a result, we see over here, the yen character is printed. The part at the end equals an empty string, tells the computer not to put a line break after that yen symbol. We'll talk more about that later. And so when line 8 runs, the number 5 is printed on the same line. There are a few important takeaways here. The first is the understanding that when you call a function that has a return statement, like return the string containing the character for yen, that function call is effectively replaced with whatever was outputted or whatever was returned by that function. That's the value of a return statement. It's the way a function we write gives output back to the main program. We've described in the past that functions are kind of like their own little programs, and this is the output side of it. Next, we'll talk about the input side of it. Second, it's useful to look at these nested functions. We have the function call return yen inside the function call to print. Because return yen is inside the parentheses that follow print, it gets resolved first because print can't run until it knows what the result of return yen is. Third, it's important to understand the value of this approach. Because we've encapsulated this in its own little function, we can now use it in other contexts as well. Instead of just printing it directly, we could, for example, compile a price listing that includes the currency symbols. Or we could use it in more complex strings that we might write. We couldn't do that if we were just printing it directly to the console like we were before. And finally, one last thing to note is that I've used this end parameter 2 different ways in these 2 videos. The first time I had it followed by some single apostrophes. This time I have it followed by quotation marks. I did that by accident actually, but it's a nice little preview of the fact that in Python, you can define strings either way, with either single quotation marks or double quotation marks. We'll talk about that more when we get to strings in Unit 4.